Good evening, everyone. This is Brother Jamal, your host of Inspiration Through Information. Welcome all. It's always a pleasure to be back. It's always a pleasure to be in front of the people sharing inspirational information when it comes to developing of oneself. This weekly episode, we will cover part three of developing self. We will in the first two parts we went over. The first part was reconstruction phase, which simply means that we were getting rid of clutter. We were getting rid of the things that we deemed wasn't conducive or part of our lives that were helpful, right? We clean all that stuff out. Hopefully those who implemented this process into their lives did an honest assessment of their lives and they removed some clutter. In part two, we did a spiritual evaluation. Spiritual evaluation was simply looking at ourselves after the clutter is gone and where we stand in our spiritual conditioning. Because the most important part of developing self is your spiritual conditioning. Your fortitude of your spirit needs to be solid, right? So in order for it to be solid, we had to get rid of some of the unnecessary stuff that seemed to kept keeping us unhinged or becoming unglued, right? So we got rid of that in part one. We evaluated our spirit in part two. Now we are upon the next phase, which is part three, which is intentional implementation. This particular part is the enjoyable part, right? This is the fun part for the simple reason is that now we have an opportunity to add to our lives exactly what we want in our lives, right? But here's the mature level of that is that whatever you add into your life, you're also accountable for that, right? So now we get a chance to take full responsibility of our lives and our condition of our lives, right? So, in other words, this particular portion will help remove the finger pointing. It would help take the finger pointing out of the scenario. So therefore, when whatever doesn't go your way or whatever doesn't go according to the way you would hope it would go, there's no one else to look at but self. So in this particular segment, implementation of intentional stuff. Now we take a look at our lives and say, what is it that I would like to have in my life? Whatever that may be, you ask yourself the question, what is it that I would like to have in my life, right? Once you come up with an idea or an inspiration for something for your life, the next steps are extremely vital, right? You have to first intentionally tell yourself, this is what I want in my life. Once you make that commitment to yourself, the next phase you will hopefully incorporate is, okay, what is it that I need to do to bring this into my life, to add this unto my life? Yes, once again, is what it is that you need to do, right? Before we start looking at who can help us or who can add to it, we first must have what they call or they consider a plan of action, right? The plan of action is an intentional writing of what steps I need to take. Example, through experiences. At a time in my life, right, I wanted to be able to have some stable income in my life. I'm gonna keep it real simple for the people that they can understand. I wanted to have a stable income. So I had to ask myself, what is it that I needed to do at that time to have a stable income for myself in my life, right? There's a couple of options, right? I can get a job. There's nothing wrong with getting a job, but then you got to ask yourself, are you comfortable with working with someone, right? A lot of times on social media and in society, a lot of people are promoting entrepreneurship, right? Work for yourself, work for yourself, work for yourself. Well, I'm here to share with you, right? I'm gonna give you a real clear understanding. Working for yourself requires, in the beginning, a whole lot more work than working for someone else, right? I'm not going to allow one. That's one of the things that we don't want to do. We don't want to intentionally implement something in our lives under false pretenses, right? We just got rid of all that stuff. Everything that we put in our lives, we want to put in our lives that are desirable, achievable, and possible within our own doing. It's not that you're going to end up doing it alone, but you got to be willing to do it alone if you have to do it alone. So in order to do that, that means it has to be intentional. So whatever I added to my life, I wanted to have a steady stream. And in the beginning, it was through employment. It was through employment, right? Because at the time of my life, when I made the decision to add that to my life, right? Now, I need everyone to understand when I'm talking about income, streaming income, I'm speaking from a legal platform. I'm speaking from being able to acquire income without having to look over my shoulder all the time, right? There's many ways to make a dollar. We all understand that. See that street intelligence, right? There's nothing that can keep you from making a dollar but yourself, right? But when I'm talking about an income, as far as developing self, right? We want to be able to have an income that we don't have to look over our backs while we're acquiring it, right? These are the things that we need to take a look at. That's why this particular phase, step 3, it has to be intentional, because intentional gives you a formidable format. These are the tools that require achieving intentional implementation. First and foremost, discipline, self-discipline, right? And I'm not saying no one has it, but most people who went through this phase of developing self, removing the clutter, spiritual evaluation, right? Discipline is not a strong suit in them. It's not that it's not possible for them to achieve it. It's just not strong in them at that moment in time. So the first thing you have to say to yourself is, I'm going to be disciplined. What does discipline look like? Discipline is simply like denying yourself an instant gratification to achieve a long-term flow of things. In other words, when I see something does not mean I have to have it now. If having it now is going to cost me to have to work harder to whatever it is that I intentionally want to add to my life. So say if I want to develop generational wealth, if I want to develop long-term finances, right, or a long-term stream of income, I have to make the sacrifices today for the enjoyment I want to have tomorrow. So that's the discipline part of it, right? And and we have to, we should be at a point in time where other people's perspectives or other people's views of how we're going about achieving what it is that we intentionally want to achieve, we have to become stronger than that. And spiritually, in our last segment, the spiritual evaluation, I covered some of those parts so you can understand why I say your spiritual conditioning has to be strong in its foundation, because all these naysayers or all these possibilities of enticing things are going to come your way. I'm not saying to you they're not, but if you fall or trip over those same things that you've always fell and tripped over, what has changed? What has changed? That means I'm still not strong in my spiritual foundation, right? So that's why I say each step that I'm giving, I'm sharing with y'all is really something that when if you choose to apply it, you have to make a commitment. You have to make a commitment to self, to whatever your spiritual belief may be, right? But first and foremost to self. You say, I'm going to be committed to adding this into my life. Now, a lot of times what we do is we add things that we feel like we never had. right? Oh man, I need to have this and I need to have, because I never knew what to have. But my question to anybody and to anyone, having something you never had also comes with not having the knowledge or the information to maintain something you never had. See, we have to first understand that, right? So what we work with is what we actually have. We work with what we actually have, what we actually have been managing, what we actually have been utilizing, right? And we strengthen that first. New things are wonderful things. I'm always aspiring to acquire something new, whether it's knowledge, informational, it's always inspirational, because anything new is a new opportunity to add to my ability to know. And then I stand on my choice. Everything that I see or that I may think is nice, I don't always go and jump into it, right? Without first researching it to see if what it is that I'm getting is going to add to my life, or is it going to cause strife on my life? See, I have to ask these things to myself. I don't need someone else to ask me, is that going to be good in your life? Right? If I really have got in touch with my spiritual self and I know the things that are pleasing to my spirit, not to my flesh, understand, pleasing to my spirit. What that means is that I can live with it conscious free, right? I have no conscience, or no negative conscience, or shameful conscience, or guilty conscience for acquiring it. This is what I mean when I say, is it good for my spiritual conditioning, right? Because the flesh acts without conscience. The flesh has no conscience attached to it whatsoever, but it can leave you in a spiritual dilemma. It can do that, right? When we act out on our flesh, we can end up in a spiritual knot, right? So in developing self, like I said, one of the most important things is our spiritual conditioning, right? So when we intentionally add something to our life, we assess what it is we added. We assess the reason we want it, right? We assess the purpose is going, we hope for it to acquire in our life, and we assess the beneficial part, right? We also weigh out like in adding this to my life, what is it going to take away from it? But here it is. If you did the first two phases, you have room. You have room in your life right now. You have room in your spiritual condition right now to add some things into it, right? That won't cause you to be crowded in your spirit. Right? The whole key to adding things and intentionally adding things, that means the things that I add have to already be able to mesh with what's left. See, I don't want to add something that causes what's already in there to be at conflict with what I'm adding, because I end up back into that state that I was before I began to develop self, because now I'll be at conflict with self. So this is why whatever we add to our lives at this point in time has to be intentional implementation. It means it has to come in and serve strategically exactly what it is that we need to continue to make a formidable foundation for ourselves, right? This is what we have to do if we really want to become one with self, right? Most people struggle with uniting with another, not because they're undeserving to unite with another, it's because they're not united with themselves. They have no unity within themselves. So to expect them to achieve unity or become one with another is really foolish thinking. Foolish thinking, right? Now, what is that? How do you know if someone is okay with themselves, right? An individual who is, if not okay with themselves, or they're working on becoming okay with themselves, begin to find the joy in the goodness of themselves. They are people who will not impose on other people to place some things in them because they feel like they need it to come from somewhere else. Happiness is something that should be in you already. Unhappiness does not attract happiness. Unhappiness does not mesh with happiness. It causes conflict between happy and unhappiness, joy and unjoyfulness, right? Like I shared in the beginning, there are a positive and a negative of all things, of all things. And this is why our intentional should be, our implementation should be intentional once we get free of the clutter. Discipline allows us to place it within us. It allows us to stay within our spiritual fortitude because whatever we add is going to add to what's there. It's going to align naturally. Just as simple as a puzzle. If you was a child who ever did a puzzle and you had to find the right piece to put into that place so that the puzzle can begin to form. This is what we do with self. Now, how do we learn what's the right piece? We have to first inspire to add. We have to remove the fear of adding something new simply by saying it's not going to work for me. That's not who I am. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to try that. I know it doesn't work because I had a friend who said it didn't work for them. So what I'm saying to you is that what didn't work for your friend means it isn't going to work for you. If it's coming from a positive place, the first thing I ask is, okay, what are you bringing to the table when you are trying to achieve it? Are you coming from a pure place? Or are you coming from a manipulative place? Yes, you're absolutely right. Nothing built on manipulation will ever stand. It will never stand. No matter how long it lasts, it will fall because it was built off of negative condemnation. It was built off of something that produces negative results. So therefore, the end results will end up in a negative result. So this is why new things are good to add to your life, because you don't know whether or not they'll be good for your life until you try. I'm not trying to make people run out of their comfort zone, but if you did the stages, step 1, step 2, now we on step 3. If you did them thoroughly to the best of your ability, your best may not be someone else's best. Just make sure it's your best. Your best, right? You should be in a place and time that right now wanting to have something in that empty spaces, the voids that the spiritual evaluation and the reconstruction phase left. It left some empty spaces in you. And now we need to find them and we need to fill them. So if we have an intentional idea or inspiration or an intentional desire that we want for our lives, this is the opportunity right here in part 3 to intentionally name it. You name whatever it is, right? And then you intentionally, what is it that I need to do in order to add this to my life? If I need to go back to school for a certain thing I want, then I need to start making arrangements. How I need not get caught up. Well, can I afford it? Will I afford it? Will it help? See, all those type of negative thoughts, right, will discourage you, especially at a time where there's emptiness going on, right? Because you don't clean some stuff out. You don't want to fill those empty spaces with nothing else negative. That's what we got rid of in the first step. We got rid of in our first phase the negative stuff or the things that we believe were no good for our lives. So we don't want to get to phase 3 and start adding our new stuff with new negativity. So all the things that you believe that should be in your life, whether it's love, whether it's happiness, whether it's money, whether it's stability, whatever it is that you want to add to your life, this is your phase. This is your phase. This is your intentional time to start doing it. Don't overcrowd yourself. Take one thing at a time. Say intentionally, I want to do this for myself. And you begin the process. The discipline will allow you to withstand the frustrations that add in something new. Anytime you build in a building, no matter how skilled you are in building a building, right, it becomes frustration sometimes, because sometimes the cement don't want to sit right. Sometimes, because of the moisture or the humidity in the air, the paint don't want to lay right. See, these are frustrations that take place. And you may have to wait a day or 2 days until the weather cooled down enough to be able to paint. So the outcome of the room that you painting can be beautiful, like you already seen it in your head, like you want in your life. This is why I say discipline. Discipline is the most important part of the intentional implementation. After discipline is commitment. Commitment becomes the next thing. See, because if you're disciplined, it's going to be easy to stay committed. Without discipline, commitment means nothing. It means nothing, because there's going to be days where you're going to physically feel like, or emotionally feel like, I just don't want to do this no more. But if it's something that you intentionally implemented into your life and you intentionally want to be a part of your life, you're going to push through anyway. And you're going to miraculously see that along the way, you're going to run into, or you're going to come across people who understands the process, and they're going to encourage you. And they may be new faces you've never seen before, that's going to say to you, keep it going, man. I know you can do it. Don't you give up on yourself right now. I know it's hard. We can't get emotionally tied up with wanting it to come from the places we think it should come from. And we got to be open-minded enough to be able to receive it when it comes, no matter where it comes from. Because there's going to be time in your process that you're going to need what they say, just an energy boost. Until you get to a place to where you can see the results in your own life. So now you have the confidence in your own experiences to know that even though I'm feeling low, does not mean that I'm not achieving. It does not mean that I'm not growing. How do I know? Because I haven't given up. Intentional implementation, man, whether it's spiritually, financially, mentally, emotionally, or physically, it has to be intentional. That means I want it, and I'm going to do what's necessary to achieve it, even when I don't like it. This is how we begin to create a real strong foundation to continuously build on. A spiritual, formidable foundation that is unshakable and unbreakable when we experience. Now, hear what I say to you: experience things in life, in this human form. Yes, no one is void of experiences. We will face them. But our segment in this 5-part series is centered around developing self. Because before you can grow something else, before you can help raise something else, you need to be raised yourself. You need to be at a level. You don't never want to take someone up to a level that you were not even stable in. Because what's going to happen is both of y'all going to fall. It's okay to build each other up. It's okay to support each other. It's okay to want to raise each other up. It's okay to want to make sure people win. Encouragement, inspiration, positive affirmation. Yes, these are these things. But we must be careful not to try to invite someone up into an atmosphere that we ourselves have not stood in yet. We ourselves had not laid solid foundation in that atmosphere. We can do it together, but that's where a deeper level of honesty comes in, which we'll find out more about on the next part. On part 4, we're gonna find more about the honesty, man, the honesty part that brings about a great vulnerability. It brings about a great vulnerability, but it also allows one to be spiritually free in its pursuing, in developing self. So into our next segment, right? Into our next part, right? I want to wish each and every one of y'all prosperity. I want y'all to continue to grow, continue to try to your best to be the best version of who you are, right? Because there's nothing greater you can bring to the table than your authentic self. And for inspiration through information, man, I pray that everyone becomes comfortable with being who they are authentically. So until our next episode, I want to wish each and every one of y'all a good night, a good evening. Be blessed.